Okay, so today's coaching conversation, we are going to explore and discuss the benefits of small-sided games, particularly focusing on Bee Netball. And I am joined by Philippa, who is a Bee leader, a level 2 coach, and runs a Bee Netball club in Bristol that in the last year has grown from 30 children and 2 sections to 130 children and 5 sections, so definitely a real expert. And also Ollie, who joins us from Loughborough University, senior lecturer in physical education and youth sport, but also very familiar with netball as a level 2 coach, a tutor, assessor, so very well qualified to talk to us about netball and small-sided games. So, going to kick off with you and jump straight into the conversation, Ollie, if that's all right. Let's get going. Tell us, why small-sided games? Why are they important, and what role do they play, particularly for children?
Yeah, it's a really good question to start with, I think, Helen. And it is the idea that they are age and stage appropriate. So they're designed with young people's development in mind, recognising that actually their capabilities might differ at different ages, and there might be different things we want to expose them to at different points in that developmental pathway. So by adopting sort of these small-sided games formats, what we can do is look to ensure that there are opportunities for engagement, learning and skill development that are relevant to where that young person is at on their developmental journey, as it were. They're designed to maximise benefits for whatever stage that young person is at.
Brilliant. So Philippa, in your now 5 sessions, you must have that whole range of ages that participate in small-sided games, and that, I guess, is quite tricky at times. So talk to us about, as a Bee leader, how do you bring that to life in your session? How do you use them? What does that look like?
Yeah, so I think from probably picking up from what Ollie said, what that actually looks like for me and the benefits are, all these children are involved. So every single child is active. From the moment that they walk through that door or through that gate, they're involved in doing something. So it's lovely to see them all busy doing stuff. What we call the ball contact time, there is a lot of that. So the more we can get a ball in children's hands, the more familiar they get, the better they get, and these skills will naturally start to develop. For me, it's around that teamwork. So the more that they're playing these small-sided games, they're involved, they're learning how to work together, building really positive relationships with each other as well. And I think it's just making sure that the children are supported through that process and using, and I know we'll talk about it probably a little bit later, but embedding some of those beliefs within that process as well. And yeah, I think for me it's just around the fact that not any child is stood waiting for their turn. We haven't got lines, we haven't got children stood still for too long. They come, they're actively involved, and they leave absolutely, excuse the pun, buzzing from the sessions because they've just had a really wonderful time, and that's so important, isn't it?
From a session structure perspective,
yeah.
Is it any different? Do you structure your session any differently for children than you perhaps would? I know you also coach adults and older young people. So does your session structure look any different, or does it kind of follow the same flow? Yes
and no. I think in different contexts. So for us at Bee Netball, we very much will have a welcome activity. So it's really important. They are so keen to be there. Most of them arrive before the actual start time of a session. So we'll have a couple of leaders running a welcome activity that they can literally turn up. A lot of the time that's in pairs, gets them going nice and quickly. So to do that, and then a couple of the other leaders will do those really lovely welcomes and introductions with the parents and the children. We would then normally go into some kind of game activity straight away. So we use a principle called play, practice, play. So we play a game. We would then home in on a practice. So there we might look at a specific skill, bring in some of the netball context a little bit, spend a bit of time on that, and then we'd always go back to a game setup. Now that game might be the same game that we did at the start. It might look a little bit different. We might add a progression. We might have a different scoring system, but it allows them to then naturally flow through from having a go, seeing what it feels like and what it looks like, homing in and practicing something specific that we've chosen or the children have chosen, and then we go back into that game again. And then obviously we would wrap up with a lovely giving out the belief stickers, praising those children that we've seen doing certain stuff in the sessions. Sometimes that might be netball specific, but more importantly, it might be a belief. And then we always finish with a massive Bee Netball cheer at the end as well, which is lovely.
So just, you've mentioned Philippa, and this is probably for both of you, I think. But Bee Netball is designed to develop the whole child. Yes, their netballing skills, and hopefully, inspire them for their future involvement. But you've mentioned the beliefs an awful lot. So I guess, Philippa, from a practical perspective, and Ollie, from some of the research that you've done around almost a motivation and what children want to see, what role do those beliefs play within the session and within the children's involvement?
Shall I let you go first?
Yeah, thanks,
I can
Ollie.
take from there.
So, yeah, I mean, for me, the beliefs are the magic ingredient. The kids have really embraced them, and they are keen to know either which one we're working on, if we're homing on one in a particular session. And as we progress through the year, what's really lovely now is we actually ask the kids if they've seen somebody in the session show a particular belief, and they are first hands up, whiz up, and they're really keen to praise each other on that as well. So for me, it's really important that it's actually the beliefs and us being able to ensure that those sessions are just really fun and engaging are the pinnacle. They're the most important for me. The netball is almost the secondary element of it, and it naturally starts to develop through that. But yeah, no, I am a massive believer of the beliefs that have made a massive impact on our sessions. So they really engage the children. We use the Bee books that are there as well, so that the children can do stuff away from the session. Obviously, Obi is a brilliant ball to have, and that the kids really engage with that at the session as well. So yeah, I think for me the beliefs are just so critical and so vital that the children have really bought into that process. And it's just as important as the actual netball itself.
Yeah. And I think the research would support that. And I should probably outline at this stage, that we did some research within the netball where we brought in cohorts of under 9s and under 11s to get them trying different versions of that small-sided game. So playing 4v4, 5v5, and then that full-sided 7v7 version. And we put some GPS units on, then we had them running around and took all different sorts of game metrics. But we also did some sort of interactive, creative focus groups with those young people as well. And that's where they were sharing with us sort of what mattered to them when it came to playing netball. And I'd just echo what Philippa said, that netball was important. They like playing netball, but netball was sometimes secondary, if I can say that, to being with their friends, having fun, team working, and developing all those wider social skills that actually will stand them in really good stead further down the line as netball players. And they don't necessarily realise they're doing all those things when they're playing netball if we're configuring our sessions in the right way, as Philippa's describing, where they are age, stage appropriate, so that we can support those young people with where they're at right now, again, on that netball journey.
Definitely. And I think what we've noticed in the feedback we've had from parents in particular, it's not just happening in their netball sessions now. It's really built confidence, and they're starting to see that in a school environment, and it's actually given some of the children the confidence to go and explore other sports, which again is really, really important. So we've definitely seen the impact not only within our sessions as leaders, but the parents have definitely feeding back in regards to the greater benefit that that's having on their child's confidence and self-belief. So for me, it's around we're actually supporting and building really strong, healthy, physically and mentally, children of the future.
Yeah, and that was the whole premise of Bee Netball, was it was enabling children to learn through netball rather than purely about netball. So it's definitely about their physical development, their emotional development, their social development, their cognitive development. It was all those elements kind of coming together. So it's brilliant to hear it in action, and it's great that the research backs up kind of the hope of the programme. Moving us on a little bit, I guess, in true fairy tale style, we're talking about children, so I'm going to use a few stories in today's questions. But Goldilocks and the Three Bears, that's all about getting it just right for the child, and Bee Netballs is just that. So how can we ensure that we do get it just right in a way that meets the needs of all children? And I guess for us as the grown-ups, we have to remember that those children are less physically developed, less emotionally developed, less cognitively developed. So therefore, what does the environment need to look like? I'm going to come to you first, Ollie, if that's all right.
Yeah, and I think I'll probably draw some ideas from the young people themselves, from the recent research that we conducted with England Netball around what makes for that positive environment. And I think they made it quite clear to us that what they wanted was a fun environment where they could be active, where they could socialise and work with their friends, that team and game-based nature of netball were seen as real central tenets to what made for that positive experience for them. Competition was mentioned, but actually far less so than those elements of having fun, being able to have a go and be with their friends, which might challenge, some conceptions out there about what children want. It might not be all that much competition. It's probably more about that fun element and making sure they can be active, have a go. I think, as Philippa said earlier, they're not waiting around for turns and those kind of things. The other point I'd add there that sort of came through from the research and in sort of wider literature is that notion that actually whilst the young people might be less developed, they've lived shorter lives than we have, actually they really are the experts in their own lives. So that idea of sort of voice and choice really are key in that space, because they know what makes them happy in a session. They know what they enjoy. They'll tell you if you ask them if something's not working or doesn't make them happy.
And they've got great ideas, actually.
And they have great ideas.
They are really
Exactly.
creative, and they love it, don't they?
Yeah. So I think it's really important that in these sessions, and if we are really adopting that sort of child-centred philosophy of coaching, where we are trying to utilise these age and stage appropriate frameworks, we really do need to prioritise young people's voices and sort of give them a say in what's happening in those sessions.
Yeah.
But I think Philippa could probably talk to that quite nicely from a practice perspective.
Yeah, and I'm actually going to point out, I know we're talking about children in this context, but I'd go as far as saying it's the same for adults.
Yeah.
It's really important that we give them voice. It's their
Yeah.
activity as well. So I use that concept in both coaching in a Bee Netball perspective, an environment, but also with adults, in the fact that they want to be part of what is going on in that session, and they're really good. They've got great ideas. They're the ones on the court. So I think for me, it's around, like Ollie said, voice and choice. So we will try and do different things in the session. So weekend just gone, we actually said to them, we're going to run 2 different welcome activities. Which one do you fancy doing? So they had the choice to go to that. Sometimes we'll ask them, what game do you want to start with? Now, that can be quite scary for a coach if you're somebody that likes it planned and you know what you're doing and what equipment you need. But they are really great, and they'll tell you the name of that game as well. So that all of the Bee Netball cards that are in there, they've got a name to a game. So you've played them a couple of times, and all you have to say is, we're going to play Bee Hospital, and then they know exactly what they're doing, kind of thing. So giving them that voice and choice in the session is really, really important. We also really value the reflect and review cards. So obviously you can use that through questioning, but there are Bee Netball reflect and review cards. But even in a coaching context, in an adult environment, having those really thought-provoking questions to really get them to consider what went well, what didn't maybe go so well, how could we improve, was there something specific that happened? I think all of those environments that we create where we give them ownership, and that, for me, is really shown with how those players have then developed, and they become to start to do it naturally. I've seen children self-reflect in a small group without us even having to ask that question, because they've kind of got used to that style.
And sometimes that's really hard to do naturally, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's so, like, giving and receiving of feedback is quite... It's not an easy thing to do for adults. So if children can start to do that in a like constructive way through netball, it's going to help their netball. It's going to help them enjoy the session, but also what a great grounding for their future.
Absolutely.
Almost.
And I mean, you can use whatever questions you like, but again, the review and reflect cards, I think what we've got to really encourage is the positive side of it. But absolutely, we need to look at the things where we want to improve, but focusing the kids on they're kids, let kids be kids. But let's create an environment that's really positive and builds them and supports each other, not only in those netball sessions, that take those skills away and apply them in life. I think the only other thing I would probably add is just around that first experience. So whether it's the first session that you're running and you've got lots of new children coming to a session, or even adults, or you've got a session that's been running for a while and that new person comes in, that first interaction and engagement for me is critical. And we've got some sort of core values, I suppose, that we use in our session, that when that person or that child walks through the door with the adult, the child is the first person we will speak to, not the adult. So we will go down to their level, introduce ourselves, ask them their names. Some of them will be really forthcoming with that information. Some will hide behind their adult. So it's just having in the bag some of those sort of things that you can do, and just those questions that you can start to interact. We've got a few little cuddly toys and things like that we can kind of say, oh, this is Obi, or this is our busy bee, or we've just got a drink station that just something as simple as, oh, have you got a drink with you? Brilliant. Do you want to come and pop it in the drink station? They've got a purpose, and they all of a sudden will just leave their parent and come with you. And then that's just a really nice way of kind of creating that first positive interaction experience, is getting them through that door. And again, for me, it's just around understanding and getting to know each individual. And I think not enough time is spent on that in occasions, that you've got to know who the children are in front of you, what makes them tick. Just simple little questions like, how's your day been? And things like that they love that. We give out birthday cards in our session, and it's just them feeling like they are a really special person in that session that goes a long way.
And the coach plays such an important role in that environment. As part of the research, we asked those young people what makes for a good coach in netball. We did it through quite creative. We got them to draw out these coaches.
Some good pictures.
Yeah, you've seen the pictures. Some of them were very interesting, but some of those key words that kept coming out in what those young people were telling us, that they wanted supportive coaches that encourage them, that listen to them, all those key characteristics that aren't anything we wouldn't expect of any coach, but that are really important in that environment with those young people, because creating that positive climate is when they can then start to feel like they can speak up a little bit more, or demonstrate that bit of creativity, or tell Philippa what game they want to play at the end of that session. So I think the coach has a really important role to play in any level, as we've said, but especially when working with children and young people. That idea of being encouraging, supportive, all those key terms are really, really key.
It's that safe environment. We talk about safe environments, and I'm not talking from a absolutely, obviously, safeguarding, first aid and stuff like that, but it's that safe environment that allows that child to be their true authentic self, and
it's about them,
yourself.
Isn't it? It's their
totally
environment,
about them,
and everything you've both said in that bit there. It's not about netball, it's about... So, Philippa, you talked about cuddly toys and getting on their level. At no point has anyone mentioned a test pass yet, or how to shoot a goal.
We'll do that next time.
Get that into my... And I guess that's the point. It's through netball. It's not about netball, but that child and that environment and the way in which you present and show them our sport is in a way that's just right for them.
Yeah, and that will hopefully, we talk about that idea of, roses needing bees. If we look after those bees and make sure they get that really positive first experience that Philippa talked about, you will get that engagement, you will get that sustained participation. We just need to get it right in those early experiences.
And I think picking up on what Ali said about it is the coach is so critical. Obviously in a Bee Netball concept it's Bee leaders, and I think that has been, I've been really lucky in what I've created, that I can hand on heart say my Bee leaders are all phenomenal because they are invested in the children. Now, fortunately, a lot of their children come to the sessions, but they're all brilliant with children, and I think that's what's so important around. If you understand children and you can get on their level with them, you can talk their language. I think that's something else that's really important. We don't go really heavy on the technical terms of netball. We will talk to them on their language as to what that means. So we don't go straight into, we're going to do a practice on intercepting. We're going to talk to them about, we're going to try and catch the ball when it's being passed by the other team. Oh, but in netball, that's called intercepting. So you can subtly drop it in, but you don't go in with that to start with. It's about making it really familiar in a context that they'll understand.
Does that feel natural to you? So,
now it does. It does now. As a level 2 coach, it's very much predominantly coached in the adult and performance environment at Academy. It was new to me, but it's something I really challenged myself with. And to be fair, I probably on occasion still catch myself, and then I'll kind of backtrack a bit when you've got that kind of blank expression on faces. But it does take a while to transition, but you absolutely can do it. And actually, it's something becomes a little bit more natural now. But that was probably one of my biggest challenges that I had to overcome, is just take that step back and go, let's talk on a child's level rather than go into the netball heavy contact.
And I guess now for the Bee leaders that you work with, they've got a bit of a role model, and
hopefully.
Let's hope. If not, we'll get one of them on this thing next time. Shall we move on a little bit and talk a bit about the format of the game? So we've spoken a lot about kind of the practice element, and I know, obviously, a lot of those practices are game based. So Bee Netball, I know you both know that, but let's just get our facts in place. So 3 stages. It's built on a very well considered kind of age and stage framework. So buzzers is kind of introduces physical literacy. Very, very, not huge amounts of netball in there. A little bit of maybe 2-a-side, 3-a-side going on, but very physical literacy focused. We then progress to flyers when we're kind of year 3 or 4 in school, or 7 to 9-year-olds. And at that point, we introduce the principles of invasion games. And we play 4-a-side, and that's across a third of a full-side netball court. So we adapt the size of the court. And then finally, we progress to stingers, 5-a-side, when we're in year kind of 5 and 6, so 9 to 11-year-olds-ish. And at that point, that's where we kind of play on more, maybe a slightly smaller, slightly reduced court size. But we introduce netball-specific positions at that point, albeit without the wings. So, Ollie, I'm going to start with you on this one. Why is it really important? Why are those adaptations to the sport really important purely to engage children?
Yeah, I think it comes back to the idea of being age and stage appropriate, like you mentioned, Helen, that we want to make sure that the way we're designing those practices facilitate young people's involvement, their engagement and learning at the point they're at on their netballing journey, as it were, or their physical literacy journey more broadly, because as you know, they might not all carry on and play netball, but there's some really useful broad development that can happen there if we configure their learning and those games in the right way through game design adaptation. So, by modifying that 4v4 version to play just across a third, it means that we can focus a little bit more on some of those fundamentals of them getting touches on the ball, of them having shots at goal that might be restricted if we went straight into 7v7 netball where there are positions on courts and all those kind of things. What we found is some of the research I said earlier, we put little GPS units on all these little...
They loved it, didn't they? They felt like roses.
They loved the GPS units. They felt like Super League players running out there on the court. But it was great to have that where we got the actual sort of physical and tactical data. And we know that on the 4v4 version, they got more touch on the ball. They actually covered more distance on a 4v4 third of a court format than they did when they were playing a full-sided 7v7.
So they're more active in 4-a-side.
They're more active. They're getting more touches on the ball. Shot volume was higher because they're all getting a go at that. And yes, sometimes it could be a little bit end-to-end, but they're getting some of those wide developmental opportunities there that are really, really valuable for them. The number of offers they made to the ball, for example, in that 4v4 was higher than in 5v5 and 7v7 because of that smaller space. They were having to change direction a little bit more.
Yeah, okay.
So at that early stage, we're starting to really develop some of those fundamental netball skills that then when we progress up to, say, a 5v5 version, they can go on some more leads and they can run a little bit further before they're then building in that change of direction. Yeah. But they've practiced and they've rehearsed and they've sort of developed that change of direction skill a little bit more in that earlier 4v4. So it's just that sort of sequential progressive building whereby we can modify. Another good example, if I may, is around, I guess, sort of shooting again in sort of 5v5 and 7v7. And now what we found is that the volume of shots was similar across 5v5 and 7v7.
Yeah.
We might kind of expect that in terms of being a similar sort of court area, in terms of how the game starts. But actually, the success rate was higher in the 5v5. So we can see there that these young people are getting more opportunities to have more success. And the reason behind that is that the post is a foot lower because we've made those adaptations in line with that age stage appropriate format. So it kind of just makes sense that we're recognising that they're not all as tall as those Super League players they might aspire to be. So let's just lower the post a little bit to give them some more success.
And it's so interesting because when we very first introduced Bee Netball, we did a ton of insight at the time. And one of the things that we found was, children were really put off and some were actually quite intimidated by netball. And it was, in fact, the shooting element. So it's very unforgiving, shooting in netball. So to start there, And I guess to couple that up with Philippa, your point around children's growth and confidence, if their first experience is they have a shot at a massively tall post and miss, and I guess then put that in a competitive environment, that's quite a lot for a 7, 8, 9-year-old to deal with as a welcome to netball.
Yeah, and I should say, actually, when we did sort of the focus groups with young people, like they told us they didn't enjoy that. And when we asked them why they preferred 4v4 or 5v5, they told us that the post was lower. I scored. I think one little girl told us, I actually scored.
Yeah.
You know, it's that chance of success that she'd maybe not had before, because in sort of her school or her club environment, they've been playing that sort of seven-a-side version that might not meet the needs of those young people as effectively as these small-sided game formats might.
Aside from the post height, Ollie, because that, you know, I know there are some thoughts out there that seven-a-side is great for younger children, and you could play seven-a-side with a lower post. What other benefits did the research show that the kind of the adaptions enabled, if you like?
I think there were lots.
Yeah.
When we think about 4v4, young people talked about having that freedom, or they could go anywhere on the court, and the real excitement that actually it was quite a small court space to look at it as an adult who would be used to coaching on a full-sided court.
Yeah.
But they felt they had freedom. They could go anywhere. They could all have a shot at goal. So that freedom felt quite inclusive for them. When we're then thinking about other benefits, a lot of the children we work with, especially those that were maybe at the younger level, so when we had sort of the under 9s doing the 7v7, talked about feeling quite overwhelmed.
Okay.
And actually having to make all these decisions about actually where do I go. And centre pass actually came up a few times, that the young people felt a bit overwhelmed about not only having to not go over the line before the whistle's blown, but also even knowing where to start in the first place. So this idea of, you know, these small-sided game formats, it's not just about a lower post, it's about sort of reducing to some extent some of that cognitive load, so they can focus on playing in their way, enjoying what they're doing, but in the process developing those skills such that when we know they're ready for it, we can look to move them on in that sort of progressive age stage appropriate framework. So yeah, it's definitely about far more than post height. Helen. There were so many adaptations that when we spoke to those young people and when we looked at the metrics, the data in front of us, 4v4 and 5v5 came out winning, as it were, in terms of being more beneficial for their development.
Yeah, and I think we're seeing that now. So we've been going for a year. Okay. And obviously we introduced a little bit at the start when we started going, but to see the development and progression now. So weekend just gone, we did have a sort of more or less a whole session of just small-sided games in those setups that we've just spoken about, and the progression and development that we've seen over that time by just believing in the process and seeing it through. I think you've got to persevere a little bit with it. Sometimes it is going to take time, but actually a year down the line now, watching each of those different stages from buzzer to flyer to stinger has been fantastic, really. And we're obviously at that stage now where some of those players will be moving up to the next level. So those players that are in the buzzer session are more than ready to transition up to flyer, and I have complete confidence that they will just go into that 4v4 setup. And we've exposed them to that a little bit over the last couple of weeks, and it's just natural. Yeah. It's just a natural progression as they move up through.
And I think there's this false assumption that actually by putting children straight into the 7v7 game, but that you're almost getting them ahead of the game, and that, you know, you're helping them to learn those skills. Why would you get them playing a 4v4 or a 5v5 when the court's different or the rules are different? But it's like we say, it's about making sure we're meeting that young person with where they're at on their developmental journey, and we're meeting their needs in the moment to support them better in the long term.
It's the long term
game.
I think that's going to be really, really impactful. I think as well, we've just got to think a little bit differently now. I'm very fortunate that I was able to access some lovely netball courts, but there was a time where I wasn't sure where those sessions were going to be, and I was exploring the opportunity, particularly at the younger age groups, to go to just a sort of community hall. So again, I think that's the nice thing about the programme in itself, that you don't need, I mean, it's lovely if you can, but we know how difficult that can be sometimes. You've just got to have a great space and a bag full of throw down spots and lines and things like that, and just be really creative. You can still make that happen across all of the different age groups.
Philippa, talk to us a little bit because it is Bee Netball is an age and stage framework, and there are several formats of the game within that 4v4, 5v5 before we progress on to 7v7. Now, its aim isn't to make it clunky and like jerky for children almost. So how do you manage those transition points? Because I imagine that's like a real crucial part of, like, so it's a slick and smooth journey to the full-side game.
Yeah, and it was one that probably 6 months ago I was starting to think, right, how do I make this happen? And actually that was the worst thing to do, because you don't have to think about it. It will just, what I've seen is it's just naturally happened. So that group of them now that have been playing Stingers for coming up to a year, are just progressing into it. All the difference is there are more players on the court now. They're actually really excited. For me, I actually think it keeps more of them engaged, because at each point it changes slightly. If a player comes in and starts at buzzer and it's the same game all the way through.
Yeah, that's a long time.
It's a really long time, especially if they go through to adulthood, whereas actually it's something that changes up, is a little bit different. You're challenging them in a different way, and what they've learned at each stage just naturally comes with them on that journey. So probably 6 months ago, it probably made me a little bit nervous, if I'm honest, but having seen it and just invested in it and just believing in that process, it's just naturally happening now that I've got that small group that will transition up to an under 12 setup of 7-a-side netball. But do you know what's even better? They can all play every position. So I've got a team full of players that are now...
Watch out, the world in Bristol.
I was going to say, watch out. But I've got a team now that they're happy to go everywhere and anywhere. Perfect. So, and then we'll start to maybe talk about that and what that looks like for them.
But it gives them somewhere to progress to, where
Absolutely.
they start to think about, I want to be a defender, I want to be a mid-court, what.
But let's not pigeonhole them too soon into a position, because we know what it's like. The tall girls either go goal shooter, goalkeeper, the fast little nippy ones go in the middle. But actually what we've done is we've built a team of players that are really supportive, really understand each other, brilliant netballers in the process, but are all ready to now take the court as a united team, which is just great.
Yeah, and I was going to say, I should probably share one of the most important findings from some of the research that kind of supports this, is that in speaking to those children about their experiences, actually they told us that the version they preferred matched up to the one that they should be playing at that age. So the under 9s preferred the 4v4 format, and the under 11s preferred the 5v5. Those under 9s, as I said earlier, really liked that freedom, being able to go where they liked, experiencing all those positions, because actually a lot of it was new to them. They didn't come in being like, oh, I'm a goal shooter. They came in, oh, I'm a netballer. So they got to play all those different positions, or no positions really in that sense. Whereas when it came to those under 11s in that 5v5 format, they kind of liked having a little bit more structure by that point, and a little bit more challenge with more court space to work with. And, the idea of positions and areas where they can and can't go on the court really came into play. So that was a really interesting finding for us, that actually the young people preferred the age stage appropriate version of the game. Yeah,
so I think between you there, from the small-sided games, is getting them more involved in the game, keeping them more active. They're enjoying it more, and then that's marrying up with exactly where you've trusted in the process and worked with it. It's actually playing out, and on top of that, children are feeling more confident. They're really well-rounded, able to communicate with one another. So it's kind of all coming together quite nicely. It is,
and I think that's something that we've just got to be okay with. And like I said, 6 months ago, having not experienced it before, I probably was a little bit nervous.
It's quite hard to tangibly think about, what does a transition look like?
But I think that's where, I'm so excited to see where that group I've got as a buzzer group now, fast forward 4 years.
Gross, by the sound of it.
I was going to say.
Fingers crossed to have some of them.
Charles Jess will be.
But it's just, that's what's really for me, really exciting. And I think where that speaks of volume is, so from where I started, I have lost a few children along the way, and the fact that they're no longer with us, but a lot of the time it's because they had to decide between netball and another sport because it was the same time. But I have had so many of them stay, and I think that shows the true value of it, in the fact that if it wasn't right and they weren't enjoying it and having the best time ever, the turnover would be a lot more. Like, I can't do any. I've gone from 2 sessions to 6 sessions. Well, it will be 6 sessions in September. So, like, I can't do any more. And those waiting lists are still there. So, and I don't really have to promote anymore. It's word of mouth. But that's the value of the programme. And I think one thing we probably haven't gone into in a lot of detail, but again, those cards, the Bee Netball cards are there. The pack is there. This one here, full of amazing practices. So it's all written there for you. There's even the beekeeper's guide that takes you through the set of activities and the weeks that you need to cover. So it's really easy for somebody to pick up. So as someone's
finding their feet, getting into it, there's loads of support.
So much support there. Like, yes, benefit of being a coach, but actually, I would say sometimes that's disadvantage.
Probably not,
It's a disadvantage in the fact that actually it's more about knowing kids, being able to connect with kids, creating that really great environment and using those resources that are there to guide you through it. So anybody can do it. The coaching bit almost is the bit that adds up a little bit of value. But like I said earlier, we're not talking to them about the technical, tactical bits. Yes, you might throw in a little bit of the coaching points when it's relevant. And I think we were talking earlier, Ollie, weren't we, about there are moments in games where when they've got that space to run into, they are doing that lovely strong drive to circle edge because they are able to in a small-sided game context. Well, when they transition then into the full-sided game, then they're going to do those win attack centres.
They want to develop their skill. They don't just want to play for the sake of playing. They want to have fun, but skill development's equally as important.
Exactly, but then it's naturally, you see it naturally happen. And I think, we were talking about that earlier, weren't we, around the benefits of it just naturally progressing.
Yeah, and the young players, the children aspire to be those Roses players. You know, I'm a Loughborough Lightning fan, so I'm going to talk to that now. But
go with it. Go with it. Other teams are available.
They are. But the children that came along, shared that they wanted to be like Beth Cobden. They aspired to be those Roses players, but it wasn't necessarily always about the position. It was about how fast she can run and get to circle edge and those kind of things. So that was really nice to see.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to move us on to probably for some people who are thinking or about to embark on this kind of children's coaching journey, they say never work with children.
Or animals.
Or animals, Bee Netball. I guess anything can turn up to the session. So, it is about children, so they might not want to part with their parents or whoever it is that dropped them off, the tantrum because so-and-so won't let them wear the red bib and she's got to wear the yellow bib. Those
all
things
happens.
that are children, just
children
like we are
children.
working with children and children we have to allow them to be children. But I guess in the context of a netball session, that can, I guess, sometimes catch us off guard a little bit because we're used to, as grown-ups working in sport, we're used to quite structured environments and controlling things. But how do you manage that? How do you ensure that doesn't disrupt the session and enables the children to be children, respond how they are going to respond, whether you like it or not, but deal with it in a positive way?
I think, first of all, be prepared for anything.
Be
prepared that you will have to deal with an array of different things and being flexible in those things.
I was watching the video footage of the research you did. There was a girl doing a cartwheel at one point in the middle of the session. I
mean, this just shows again why 7v7 might not be the best format, because we did have cartwheels and some lovely twirling, I think, from another player when they were waiting for the ball at the other end of the court. But you have to be prepared for anything, don't you?
Absolutely. And I think what's really been beneficial for our setup is the amount of leaders that we've got involved. So there are specific ratios that you need to achieve just to make that experience great. And we've almost got more, which is lovely. So you've got to have that support around you so that the session can still continue. But if that child needs that little bit of extra support and care, there is somebody to do that. What I think has been really lovely is through the embedding of the beliefs, the children actually really support each other now. So as soon as they see one of their friends upset or they need that bit of support, somebody will automatically go over, are you okay? So it started off probably coming from us, but what we see now is it's coming from peer to peer. I truly believe it's because because of that environment that's been created through the embedding of the beliefs. We've got all sorts of little things probably in our back pocket. So like I said, we've got little cuddly toys that can be really helpful. We just coming down onto a child's level and having that conversation and having that empathy with them. If there's a first aid, something like that happens, again, having somebody that can go and support that child in that moment, but you've got loads of other people that the session's still continuing. So I'd say be prepared for anything. Make sure you've got lots of people around you to help support so that that child can be looked after. But by embedding the beliefs and really getting that philosophy through the session and for the children, they become that network of support for each other as well. And don't panic. Like I've said to a couple of parents when they're like, I'm not really sure if they're going to do the whole session or get involved. That's okay. If they just come and watch for the first session and just figure it out and just see if it's for them, they might dip in, they might dip out. But again, it's making sure those players have got voice and choice within that session. If they don't want to do it, they don't have to do it. It might be that a little bee, one of our bee leaders is on the side and they just need to throw a beanbag to them for a little while or use a different ball for a little while. So we've got an array. Obviously, we've got the Obi balls, but we've also got some really squishy soft balls as well. Yeah. So sometimes I've got a child that really doesn't like to play Bee Hospital. So when they've got too many people running around them, so we can either give them a certain space that they feel a bit more comfortable with, or sometimes when we play Bee Hospital, we'll have another activity as well. So it's about really getting to know the children and them feeling like they are really special for their own uniqueness in that session. And I think that's so important.
And I think that brings us back to why that age stage appropriate is so important. Because as you say, Philippa, if you have a littlie come along and they're new to netball and the first thing they see is all these bodies running around on a big netball court, that can
overwhelming.
feel really daunting for them, So actually, if we then come along and they've got these small little 4v4 sort of courts working with each other, it just seems less daunting for them. It helps ease that journey into it a little bit more.
Yeah, and something else that we've done, so we have Bee Buddies. So if it's somebody's first session, my daughter's usually the first to put her hand up to do it, but all of them will, and we'll say we need somebody to be a Bee Buddy this week, and they'll come over and that child-to-child interaction, most of the time they'll hold their hand and take them to the drink station, and I think just having little things like that it doesn't become you as the bee leader being responsible for absolutely everything. It's a shared
it's their session, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. For me, I've seen such a transition in where, if I look at where we started to where we are now, we're probably running sessions in a completely different way because we've just gone on that journey as a collective together. And like I said, it's been more about the children, more importantly, creating those amazing environments and experiences for each other.
But there's some really nice wider learning as well, though. Like I think you said early on, Helen, it's not about just the physical here. It's about those wider social, emotional, cognitive areas of development that we can sort of foster through sport. And we know that sport can be a really useful tool for developing those sort of wider life skills. And I know that Bee Netball is really helpfully mapped against these different areas of learning. So if you were using it in a school context, I think that's really helpful that teachers can evidence actually this is how it might be meeting that physical education curriculum. But I think that wider learning, those life skills, development opportunities that can be fostered through Bee Netball shouldn't be underrated.
Totally.
And just another real sort of strength for me of why we should be adopting this age stage appropriate format.
I mean, it's the point, isn't it? I remember when we were very first introducing Bee Netball, like the line that got lots of buy-in was almost like, at 7 years old, surely being a great communicator, having pride, being a little bit resilient, being able to communicate is much more important than being able to do a technically perfect chess pass. And absolutely. I think, we need to just remind ourselves of that really regularly. And
we hear it from our parents all the time, the benefits that they've seen from that. So I've got one child who was really nervous coming at that first couple of sessions, but we supported, the girls supported that were at the session as well, and she's now she's a different person. She's a completely different person. And her mum shared with us the other week that not only has they seen it in the benefit in their netball session, but in school they've commented on how more confident she is. She's gone and experienced other activities as well. So I think it is that bigger picture piece, isn't it, around it's about those children building confidence, building self-esteem, that a lot of them have been impacted by still from COVID. So I think still have a role to play within making sure that those children are supported. And how brilliant is it that we've got a great programme that can do that and hopefully make them brilliant netballers long term. But actually it's about them and investing in them as young children.
And netball as the official ultimate team sport.
Absolutely.
You cannot dribble from one end of the court to the other. You have to work as a team. Like, we really can do that, probably more so than other team sports, potentially, because of the reliance upon one another.
And it's funny you mention that, because actually some of the young people talked to us about other team sports they'd played.
Okay.
But what made netball special for those young girls that we spoke to was that everybody had to play a role. They as young as 7-year-olds were telling us that what made netball special was that everybody had to play a role to be successful.
Yeah.
And that's just really nice, isn't it?
It was really special to hear, I thought,
Yeah.
that, as young as 7, they could tell us that
They're
actually
recognising it.
that team ethos that really does underpin netball in ways that it doesn't maybe so much in other team sports, where, you could have a couple of players that dominate. Everyone's really got to play well to be successful, and like I say, as young as 7, they were recognising that. So we've got the research to back up that those young girls thought that
it's official research to back it.
We'll
go with that.
Most teamwork focused sport.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've been involved in Bee Netball for a long time, and it definitely is something that we are literally tickling the surface. Where there is a long way for the programme to go, and I think, Philippa, the examples where you've really brought it to life through the work you've been doing is starting to help us see what potential it could have, and it does have. And I can't wait to see your buzzers in 10 years' time. I'm really intrigued as to how that goes, and I'm sure it will go well. I think just the work that we can do in schools, but also in communities, and yes, through netball clubs. Netball clubs absolutely have a role to play in Bee Netball, and I hope are really excited by the opportunity Bee Netball presents to them as a club, but also beyond clubs, in literally in community, hearts of communities, youth clubs. I get quite excited when I start to think about the potential, and I think all the things we've talked around the beliefs and the fact that it's age and stage, the fact that all that is what is the magic dust. So I definitely see a huge future for Bee Netball, and hope that together we can kind of all drive that. But to both of you, Philippa, from a practical and probably personal perspective, what are your aspirations for your club, but also the children within your club at the moment? And then
I feel like I've got so many.
And then Ollie, share, as a researcher and as someone who really cares about netball and I love the lightning fang, what are your aspirations for Bee Netball as well?
Shall I go first?
Go for it.
I think, like you said, Helen, I'm at all points, obviously particularly the buzzers at the minute, to just see that progression and development all the way through over the years is just something that I'm really excited to see. But even from the flyers to the stingers and stingers upwards, the individual, I think that's the individual journeys of each and every child that is currently at my session. I've got boys at some of my sessions as well, so I'm really keen to see their progression and development through, hopefully into the mixed or men's form of the game as well. I think for me, I've been on just such an exciting journey over the last sort of 12 months, and just to see how I've started from literally setting up 2 sessions to where it's got to, even that's blown my mind, and to have waiting lists as well. But just to see how it has impacted children and their families and the benefits that that's brought to them. I mean, we run Father's Day sessions, Mother's Day sessions, that we actually bring the community together, which has been great. But for me, I think we've got to be brave. I think we've got to maybe challenge some of the current ways that we deliver things, and not be afraid to do things a little bit differently, and also be not afraid that things might not quite go right the first time. Some of it is a little bit of trial 100%. And error, but I think for us to really truly invest and do what's right for the children, that change has got to come at some point, and I think we're living, breathing proof that it can be so vital and so important. And I think I will have a lot of the children that are involved now in the future in netball, and at the end of the day, netball's the winner. I know that's really cliche, but
It's very cheesy,
very
Philippa.
cheesy. But I think that for me, that's the most important bit. And even for the Bee leaders, I really hope that some of them continue to stay with us and give them confidence to maybe go on and do a level 1 or a level 2 and go with either their child, or even if they haven't got children in the programme, but progress with netball, that we keep them
even if they just feel more confident as a leader, you know, in their work environment, like that's a gain, isn't it?
Yeah. So I think for me, it's looking at the bigger picture, the wider impact that it can have, seeing each individual's journey, whether they're a player, a leader, a coach. We've got a really great committee team as well, that some people aren't even at the sessions. They're the behind the scenes people that are doing all the great work as well. So that will, for me, the benefit has been the community development, the community feel. And we've got a number of people within our club that are from different, so the adults that play in leagues in different clubs. So I almost feel like we've brought a community of clubs together as well. And just we'll see where we go, whether they stay with us as Bristol Hive and we take over the world
World domination.
Or they go off and they go to a different environment in a different club. That's fine with me. Again, it's around what's right for that child in that moment.
And often for children, it's the day of the week, isn't it? Because
absolutely.
brownies, gymnastics, swimming lessons, mum's got work, whatever. Like it is logistics often.
But I'm very much of the mind of, if that's right for that child to go and explore somewhere else, then that's the best thing. We're not going to be a club that just keeps everybody here because we've invested in them. It's around what's right for the children and letting them have that voice and choice in their netball journey.
Nice. Ollie, from a researcher's perspective?
Yeah, and I think you sort of gave the game away a little bit. You know, I've got a long history myself with being involved in netball, and it's a sport that I really want to see thrive. And despite having all that involvement, through my job role, I have the sort of privilege of seeing lots of other sports and how they do things. And small-sided games aren't necessarily anything new. They've been around for a long time. And other sports have really embraced them, maybe a lot more than the netball has to date. And I think what we're seeing now is the potential, as Philippa has talked to so helpfully today, about what small-sided games can do if we embrace them meaningfully in our practice. So I think for me, what I'd really like to see is a little bit of that change, where that netball community buys in a little bit more to Bee Netball, recognising that the power and the promise, I guess, of small-sided games, that stage appropriate framework, just recognising that actually it does a lot to support young people in their journey as a netballer, as a person more broadly. Because I think there's such a rich culture and heritage to netball that sometimes we can worry about letting go of that, or that taking on something new like Bee Netball might change it. And I think the position we need to adopt is that it's not going to change it, at least not for the worse. It's going to make it better and enrich it even more. So for me, I'd just like to see some more change and some more welcoming of that small-sided game format, and to see Bee Netball really taking off across clubs and schools throughout the country, I guess, Helen.
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
And I think we're talking about it in the Bee Netball context, but I will use some of those games and activities in my adult environments, and they love them. Like, there is absolutely nothing. They are just small-sided games that are really great for, obviously, for this around kids, but they're brilliant for adults.
They're the fundamentals of our sport, aren't they?
So whether don't be afraid to use them as well.
Yeah. And even, you know, the belief side and the almost cultural side that we're trying to embed. You know, I'd challenge any adult to say that the beliefs aren't good for grown-ups as well as children, and we might word them differently, but the principles are exactly the same. So, I think it can only enhance the sport as a whole, and certainly and importantly, it can only enhance the child's introduction to our sport and hopefully their involvement into the future.
Most definitely. And we just need some more Bee Netball clubs, not only in the Southwest but across the country. It would be amazing. So anyone out there that's just thinking about starting it, be brave. There's loads of support and resources out there. Just get stuck in and make it happen. It is absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
Perfect. Right. Well, come to a conclusion there. Thank you both very much. Been a lovely little natter this afternoon. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Helen.